Oh, just hitting go live on Instagram. It's always delayed. Anyway, welcome everybody. It's episode 16 of Live Live here on Wednesday, October 29th. It is our Halloween episode, but we're not really too into Halloween, so we're just wearing our usual t-shirt and Brad looking sharp in his jacket. But I'm really excited to have Brad Novak here. He's a good friend of mine. We work together at two different firms. Currently, he is a senior IT manager at HOK at their Atlanta office. So thanks for being here, Brad.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
I hope so. We'll see. I'll do my best to try and keep it fun. But yeah, I mean, we talk every now and then, and I know I don't know that we'd really caught up since you went to HOK a little over a year ago. But can you kind of give us a rundown of what you're doing there?
Yes, I'm a senior IT manager here, basically for the Southeast region. So there's 3 or 4 offices that I manage the technology on. There's a few people that work with us in this Southeast region and pretty much the East Coast. We have probably 70 or so, 75 or so technology staff throughout the company. It's about a 1,900 person company.
Yeah, and for those who aren't familiar with HOK, one of the premier architecture firms in the world. How many offices do you guys have?
27 now, I think.
That's incredible. And then
a couple in Asia, London, Dubai.
And I mean the body of work is extensive, and some of the stuff I think I know the most about is the stadium. So they pretty much reinvented the stadium. So if you've been to any stadium that's been built in the last 20 years, they had an impact on it, one way or another, don't you think?
A little bit. I think we can't take the spotlight away from the other big stadium companies too. So
I guess, but it's kind of like the reinvention of it. Anyway, really, really super cool stuff.
Yeah.
It's just interesting your kind of career. So, graduated from IIT in Chicago, architecture degree, right?
Yes.
You were in Todd Coolman's class.
Yes.
Which is a funny other connection. I keep trying to get Todd on this show. It would be something special. But so you were there kind of in the days. Was David Hovey one of your professors there? Did you ever have David?
I did not have David Hovey, but he was a professor there.
And then from there, you worked for some firms, and you were an architect or doing architectural work, but then transitioned really more into kind of the technology side of things. Is that right?
Yeah, my running joke now is I'm a recovering architect. So.
Well, and so we first met working at Arc Ideas. First, I was an intern, and you gave me crap during that whole time, and then I came on full time, and you still continue to give me crap. But as even a summer intern there for whatever 3 months, I mean your impact in the company was real. I think they put me sitting next to you, right? I think you actually took the first day or first half day of my internship to onboard and walk me through the structure and the system of how we do stuff, right? You weren't necessarily trying to train me yet on, being an architect. It was really more the fundamentals of how we operate as a business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to call it the hot seat. New staff would come and sit next to me, and I would have when I'd have projects. I mean, you and I worked on a couple projects together, so that was really fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, it meant a lot how you sit at your desk, how you take notes, back then when you had to take notes on your phone calls and such. So that led to kind of understanding the process a little better moving forward. But yeah.
Do you remember kind of the fundamentals of the speech that you'd give on the first day?
it was basically, remember that you're not doing this just for you. You're actually doing this for the other people in the office, the past people and the future people. Um, also leave things better than you found them. I was notorious for going into new projects or taking on old projects and making sure they were correct rather than just continuing them. So I brought up questions that weren't necessarily related to the problems or the need for the deadline. I made sure that the information was ready for the contractors to understand. So, and sometimes it was a little confusing, and I had to think about it and potentially change or alter the set to make it a little clearer.
I mean, there's so many different levels or layers of information as it relates to a design firm, because some of what you're talking about here is the information that goes to the people building it or the people pricing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the information, how that's interacted between different members of the design team or different principals of the firm. And there has to be a level of consistency there, right?
Well, absolutely. Again, I, like all of us, we need to take a vacation now and then. And if someone can't come in and take on the project and complete it or continue it while you're not there without having to ask too many questions, from a process standpoint, obviously there's the work itself, but I always want the process to be um, uh, clear enough and consistent enough that you don't have to worry about the process, right? You don't pick a pencil up and try to start writing with the eraser. You know that the pointy end is the one you write with, right? So you don't even have to think about it. And that's kind of the way I think about standardization and um, clarity for everyone involved creating the documents.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that starts with, everything from file naming to, and we'll talk about Bradcat a little bit, right? Because we just have to. Um, but yeah, the whole idea of the file naming and what I learned from you and folder structure and things like that is exactly that. You don't have to think about it. We have a million things to think about. We shouldn't have to go through and say, what date format do we have to use for naming a file with a date, right?
Right. And also too, it's about speed of access. It's always been about speed of access, right? It's always been
Hmm.
about going into a folder structure and being able to find what you need to find. Whether you've been on the project for its entirety or a week.
Right.
So you need to be able to understand the folder structure and the file structure to be able to navigate properly. I had a mantra that was name your folders, name your files, name your layers, and stay in the box. That was kind of my mantra. And if you go through those, there's a reason for all of that, right?
Oh
Um,
man, the stay in the box. Yeah, we got to talk about that one.
yeah, there's, you know, naming is everything. Um, I don't call you anything other than Dave to your face. I might say things behind your back, um, but so I no one chooses, no one should have to choose how to name their own files. There should be a system so that people can find them easily. And uh, entering a folder structure and seeing files that are nicely organized, that um, you automatically will name your file to fit it into that format, or else your file will, stick out. It also pertains to automation. The file name can help a lot with automation, and it's not just file names anymore, right? It's group names in um, uh, in our network systems. It's naming of our servers. It's naming of our um, uh, even the studio stations and such, right? The
Yeah.
actual physical station. So it naming is just something that's very unique, and it should, you should infer something from the name just by the way it looks, right? I like your especially the Live Live, you know, counter that you have right now. We're at what, 00000016.
Right. Yeah.
That means something, right?
Yep.
If you look at that, you know that you thought about it, and you have maybe somewhat delusions, but you're planning for a lot of these, and more than a lifetime of these, and um, but it gives you a sense of, okay, there's a process, right? And so every one of these things, whether people notice it or not, have an intention to them, right? And you can tell when people aren't intentional versus when they are. It helps for training, because you can start talking to people about, making sure their organizational skills are better. That'll only help them be a better architect, designer, engineer in the, moving forward, not just because of naming, but because you can talk to them about it, right?
Yeah, and I always had this thing. I still have this thing, and at LivCo, files should all be named in all caps. The reason, my logic behind it, all the folders have numbers and then are in all caps, so they sort the way we want them to sort, and we have them in groups. So if we, you know, it goes 2 digits. I guess, you know what? Maybe I'll share. Maybe I'll do a screen share. I've never done this before. Let's see if this is going to actually work. I have no idea. Window.
You're testing things during my podcast.
I know.
Oh
Isn't this
boy.
embarrassing?
You know,
Forget it. I'm not going to do it.
see, there we
I'm not
go.
going to show our folder structure. But
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? I'm going to harken back to the early 90s when we had I was on I worked for Lester B. Knight Architects, and we did a new post office for the city of Chicago, in downtown, so the main post office.
mhm.
And there were 1,800 drawings in that set, something like that, and back then you had to print them all, but um, pallets of drawings. But the issue was, they all these drawings, these were in CAD, so all of these drawings had to have their own specific name. So, and we only had 8 characters to do it. So, because back in the day, DOS didn't allow the freedom. I'll be nice and call it the freedom
Yeah.
of uh, uh, you know 200 plus characters. So we had to figure out how to get files to work with only 8 characters, and it was um, a very liberating experience to kind of realize, oh, we can do this. And boy, oh boy, look at how organized it is. It just really kind of reinforced that, to understand why. And then all of a sudden realize we can use those file names to actually process the drawings in a certain way. Now, back then it was all in, Lisp, or, a
Right.
little more advanced, .NET or Visual Basic, whatever it was at the time. But having those file names to be available to process automatically, and that carried into um, things that you saw starting out in when we started working together. But it evolved, and it also evolved not just because of my brain, right? I took a lot of everyone's contributions to this. When they came up with a great idea, it was, wow, that's a great idea. Let's figure out how this works. Um, so I had to kind of be the filter for what's worth putting the effort into program versus what's not. How much information is too much information. When it gets too muddied, the water gets too muddied. So those things. So it makes a lot of difference when you can actually see the process work, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and on that, on the kind of on the aspects, because I think the evolution, the freedom that you speak of, right? So if you go back where you just had so many constraints in terms of file naming, size limits, and things like that, so you have to essentially come up with some sort of a coding system, an intentional system, so that things would organize and sort properly, so you could find it. And then visually, and that's kind of going back to the doing stuff in all caps. Number one, to me, it's then you don't have to think about it. Like, do I put a capital letter or do I put a lowercase, or am I just doing it? You don't have to think about it. It's just all in caps, and then it reads cleanly. And then visually, the way your eyes see it, you can access that information faster just because you're used to it always looking that way.
Right.
Now, the freedom that you speak on is kind of the Thomas Kearns, one of my graduate professors. The world of everything is miscellaneous. So the actual characters that you use become less crucial because of search,
Right.
right?
Right. It's a
Or
whole different world now. Yeah.
like Russ, my business partner, he's just like, well, I don't, the naming isn't important because I always sort by most recent, by date, which there's something valid to that, right? Because that has embedded information outside of the name, which allows you to access that information differently. So kind of managing those two things becomes increasingly challenging, right? With metadata and anything else that you can attach to these files, or even any piece of software where you can just open recent files.
Right. Right. Well, I think also too, though, remember that um, the philosophy of standardization and we'll call them guardrails. People think of it as rigid, but you know we keep talking about it as it makes it easier, or you don't have to think about it.
Right.
That's kind of it's kind of diametrically opposed, right? You want standardization and you want it to be fairly rigid so that you don't have to think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sound right, but it actually is the truth. Where um, no matter what, we always have guardrails, stoplights, stop signs, and such, right? We always have warnings. We always have exit signs to get off of the highway. So the key to it is um, I think the hard part is naming it whatever you want to name it, but having that philosophy lends itself more towards, well, I call offices workstations, or I call workstations desks, or I call desks tables. Everybody has their own way of saying something or referring to something, and um, you know, some people say soda, some people say pop. It's the exact same thing. But you know, if we say let's all call it soda for this tool, or you know, for our environment, then you don't have to worry about it, right?
Right.
So that's
Everyone's, yeah,
that's where
speaking the same
that's where you
language.
don't have to worry about it comes in, because
Right.
now if it starts becoming um, uh, uh, common knowledge for everybody that's using it, it tends to just kind of live, and you don't have to worry about it. I I I was really I was really blown away by the way everybody at our firm. You know, we worked at a firm called Arc Ideas to start out with. It's a great little firm in Chicago, about 20 or so people. Maybe it ended up about 30, 40 people at the time when we were there. And uh, we through the training and through the repetitive nature of what we're doing, it became, you know, the naming of these files became a language all to its own. And it was kind of strange to me because I never called it the names that everybody else called it. I referred to it as all the letters in a row because in my head I had to make sure it programmed correctly. So I
Mm-hmm.
never started talking about them as
An OBOP.
work as an O bop or an A bop
Yep.
or an F bop, whatever everybody was calling it. I didn't, you know, I let that happen. I thought it was kind of neat to see it happen because that way, you know, it became part of just their work. It's like
Mm-hmm.
how we're talking, right? They would just talk about the files as the files, and it really felt good, because then you knew that it was simple enough, it made sense enough, and it helped everybody, right? And that's really the there is no you know, they called it Bradcad, which I thought was hilarious, and that was coined by a friend of ours, I think, Mike Wagenbach, and I think that was absolutely hilarious. And but it was never intended to be that way. It wasn't mine, right? I did it for the company to be as efficient as possible, right? I never thought of it as anything other than that. I never had a, you know,
But you were a pretty serious enforcer of it.
yeah, well, I had to be in the
Yeah.
beginning, but then it just happened,
Right.
right? And then what happens too is when things aren't working, it's a lot easier to find what's not working, or it's a lot
Hmm.
easier to narrow it down, right? Because if all of a sudden someone is um, veering off the standard, it affects the people working on the projects as a whole, right? Because those standards aren't followed, and there's automation and customization and efficiency that's built into that standard. And if you veer off, it brings it to the surface, right? Where you can say, okay, we're a little off here. Let's get everybody back in line and get everybody, more efficient. And that was kind of the goal behind it.
Well, and I love kind of the conversation around the 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 naming conventions as kind of a language that's spoken around the office. And we're starting to see that as we've grown and we've built our design team and our construction team too. Now the lingo that you hear talked spoken around the office, like IFP, right? DA, PPR, like nobody would know what those meant, but everybody in the office knows what they mean because it's part of a defined process, like PPR, right? Post project review. Now, IFP is still a hard one. I'm not sure if that's issued for pricing or issued for permit. So we got to relook at that one. But when that just becomes part of the lingo and everyone is speaking that language, it's just a reinforcement of the culture behind that process. It's not
Yeah.
like, hey, are we going to have that drawing set that is going to be sent to the people so that they can price it? It's just IFP, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It's that
Yep.
piece.
Yeah.
Uh, so that makes me feel good. Um, on on the Bradcat, just to go back to it a little bit, just to give some background on this. So back in the day, right now we were part, and you led, and I worked closely with you, like the Revit implementation. But before that, it was all AutoCAD. But the most beautiful system of AutoCAD that you've ever seen,
It's
because
very nice of you. It's very nice of you, but remember, it's not just me. It
Sure.
was
Well,
everybody,
I didn't
right?
say, yeah. Oh, for sure. But yeah, just the structural organization behind it, because AutoCAD at its base is just an abyss of whatever, right? There's all these layers, there's these line weights, it's just kind of it's a really everything's in colors that might print differently because of a pin size. It's based on a pretty antiquated system. And so the process that was put in place was, you had a file naming structure that would be a base plan, that would then, if I can even remember, because this was like 25 years ago, 23 years ago.
Isn't that weird? That's
It
that's a
is
long
so
time
weird,
ago.
so weird. Why do we
That's
look so young though?
I know. Hey, we have our hair. I have most of it, I think,
We're
still.
Yeah,
So
we're
that's
doing
good.
good.
Yeah,
It's because of these live shows that keeps us young.
that's right.
Um, so you would basically, a Lisp routine would run based on the file name and process certain layers to turn on and off. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, for the most part,
Yeah.
right? And you have
And
to name your layers right. That was part of the
right,
mantra, right?
right. The layers have to be named correctly. You cannot create an outside layer because the system wouldn't work then, right?
Well, no, the system would freeze it, so your stuff wouldn't show
Oh,
up.
right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. You found
There's a
a system to
consequence.
enforce it.
There,
Right.
there's a small. It was a small inconvenient consequence to make you kind of reset your thought and try to make sure you put things correctly on the right layer so that it would show up for everybody.
Yeah, and then that ends up with a bunch of file names in a folder that would make no sense to anybody unless they knew the system. And then you could open files and work without just having this mess of stuff everywhere. while stay inside the box, I believe that's a function of the sheet layouts, right? Because, or no, that was for details.
Details.
Basically, in AutoCAD, it's infinite. So you could draw every, and firms do this. You draw every sheet just in one view, right? And you just have stuff everywhere. And how do you even locate her? Then you did sheet stuff. So it was trying to, avoid that just endless roll of sketches and not knowing what's relevant, right? It's been a
Right.
long time.
Yeah. Basically, it was in order to um, be efficient on future projects, where
Hmm.
these details were individual files that you could pull out of sets and put into other projects and modify them as you need without having to rethink of everything. So, and in order for that to happen, they had to be modular and fit in like puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
So you stay inside the little virtual box that you were given, and that would be a module size, and things could stack really easily, organize really easily on any set, no matter what project you're working on. So,
And then
yeah.
how did that with then Revit implementation, how did that shift over into Revit? Does that just kind of start from scratch because it's just such a different
Uh,
infrastructure?
right. Revit is a whole nother animal, right? Revit now um, was more focused on um, the content rather than um, the automated folder and files that happen.
Right.
Um, you know, but naming your views properly, naming your components or your families properly, naming um, even the line weight structure in Revit, should have a really good naming convention. And for that, it turns out it needs to be more what's in-house baked, what did we take from a consultant, or is a consultant going to apply their standards inside ours? How does that differentiate so we can always use what we have and not necessarily get confused by other standards? Um, so those are the challenges in Revit, right? There's usually one or two or three, maybe half a dozen models that get linked together, depending, right, or more. Um, and then how you name or how you organize your work sets and such. So there's
All right.
um, that whole realm. Everything in Revit is still a naming challenge. It's just not as um, um, uh, fractured. It's all in one database, if you want to call it. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot. There's not a lot to. It's not a lot different if you choose for it to be. Again, if you're comfortable with um, being things being abbreviated, um, and having controls, um, because automation really works when you can go, these four characters in this spot of the view name is what I'm going to process. So I can always grab these four characters. I don't have to search for it. I don't have to strip the dashes between things and kind of figure out what's what. These four characters from slot 6 to 10 or 7 to 10 are, you know, those are the ones we deal with for
Yeah.
this particular automation. So that's kind of where it comes from, right? Um, and I don't think it's that much different in Revit. It's just a different um, uh, different needs based on what Revit does. We don't necessarily have to work too much on colors versus pen sizes, but we do
Right.
have to work. But we do have to worry about they line thicknesses and what that means, and where it gets applied, or how they're named. Everything in Revit is, you can only find things by name. Think about your views, your sheets, all of that, right? So it's another naming challenge.
Yeah. Kind of thinking back to early implementations of it, I always felt like it was a challenge for firms because they wanted one of the Revit drawings to look like the graphic standards that they had
Right.
previously.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
like, how important is that? Because once you break from the native, it's a whole different way. You can do whatever you want, but is the juice worth the squeeze, right?
Right. Well, but I mean, think in terms of process, Revit's a whole different process, right?
Right.
Training new staff on the initial stages of a project it's really difficult now. Young staff, you know, they need to be taught how to be architects right away. It's not about training them on make this thickness and make sure it looks good, right?
Hmm.
Because you're actually drawing a wall and a door and a stair potentially, and you're drawing. The intent of your drawing isn't to put lines on paper anymore. It's actually you're building a model, and if you don't necessarily know how to do that from your schooling, and it varies, but that's the challenge when it comes to younger staff.
Yeah, and actually, because on that note a little bit, we've been talking about a lot of software standards, right, and operational standards, and the construction documentation standard, and specifically with younger people, not even just younger people now, but always people coming out of school. Did we at Arc Ideas, did we have a set of dimensioning standards? How did we inform what should be dimensioned and what shouldn't be? I always felt like with my drawings, I felt like Dave Eishman would just redline it. He'd put it on the drawing board and be like, put a dimension here. And he'd explain to me why. But did we have, like, how do you manage standards of what should be dimensioned or not? Or is that just all relative to each project?
Dimensioning standards. I mean, that's a whole nother hour of discussion, right? Or annotation standards
Yeah.
in files and such. I think having good mentors is the key. Dimensioning is, we still just produce a set of instructions, and
Hmm.
until people that we deliver this to are requiring us to deliver something other than a set of instructions, paper set of instructions on 2D drawings, solely for the most part, we're going to still need to figure out how to dimension. And if you build the dimensioning tools to help you with that, then you have that ability to control it a little bit. Having, you know, a standard is I think it's more of a set. I like it being more of a standard set, so that you can peruse whatever you need to peruse, and discover things that you might not be looking for while you're looking for something. I think that always helps to keep things in context. So just a standard sheet that says dimensions look like this, well, that's not going to help. But if
Right.
you go into a project that's similar to yours, that you hand somebody and say, this is what I think is really good, and they can look at that set and go, okay, and then you can explain on that set of drawings, this is why things happen, and this is why dimensions on this drawing look this way. Then it gives it context and gives it something to a little base for that people to hold on to.
Yeah, I mean, in the residential world, especially, it's a pretty clear the drawing set, especially, is probably used the most during framing, right? Foundation and
Mhm.
framing. So on kind of uh, in saying it's instruction, that's exactly right. You're not going to talk to this carpenter or this concrete former. You need to hand over a piece of paper that's going to tell them how and where to build this. Is as simple as it gets, right? And so,
Yeah, and
and
and the ultimate is to actually have that team give you comments on your
mhm,
work, right? Have the humility to show them this file or show them this drawing and say, what can I do better next time? And I guarantee you that builds a level of trust with contractors to no end. If you can look at them and say, what do we need to do better for the next one? Where did you see gaps? Because we're basically drawing in a usually a nice comfortable chair somewhere. We're
Hmm.
not out in the cold or the drizzle and having to look at the set of drawings and try to make sure it's clear enough for someone to build from. So it's important.
Yeah, and the evolution in technology and drawing, back when you'd have to hand draw, and I talked about this, I think, with Greg Wallach the other week. Um, Back when you'd hand draw, every line was like super intentional, and you were laying it out, and so you kind of knew where you laid that out was essentially going to be a dimension, and every dimension that you drew. And I never had to do this, but how didn't you used to like stencil letters or something in order to write
We
the
used we used
dimension?
a little tiny chisel and a little
Yeah,
tiny hammer, and we would, yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
You're in stone,
hmm,
but seriously though, every dimension that you drew took
absolutely.
time.
I
And now
I'm I'm old enough. I did it all. Yeah,
it
I
it
it was super important because it was permanent, right? It
right.
was pretty much, you couldn't just kind of pull a dimension and go, that's better, or remove it and throw it somewhere else, right? It was very intentional, and you had to think about it. And because you have to think about, again, starting from what I said in the beginning, you're not doing this for you. You're
Right.
doing this for others, whether it's your teammates that you're working on the project with, or the actual municipalities you're submitting to. That's got to be clear for them, and the people out there trying to build it in 3 dimensions, and off of our thoughts, right? So
Yeah.
it's not for you; it's for someone else. So when you're drawing something, it's never for you.
Yeah, and nowadays with the tools that we have, you can just hit a button and it'll dimension everything for you. It's like
Yeah, well,
that's
I mean,
that.
AI is
Yeah.
going to, there's going to be benefits to AI, right? If we want to jump a little bit ahead in what the future can be, is AI is going to help, but um, it's still ways away from being truly um, uh, transformative. There's good ways. It's a wiser search. It's a more comprehensive search. But in terms of actually building some things, it makes it. It's still in process, right? It's still young, and I think we talked a little bit before this meeting about how what we do isn't cookie cutter.
Right.
Every single item that comes out of our offices is a bespoke jewel in our perspective portfolio, right? We want this to be something unique and special, and beautifully designed for our clients that are expecting something unique for them,
Hmm.
right? So we don't have that many standards, right? And if you think about the big picture, right? Think about automotive industries, or the aircraft industries, or any other industry that builds big things that are repeatable, right? We don't have that,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of standards. Things have to fit together, whether you make it, I make it, or someone makes it across the globe. They have to combine to make a single part, and they make a lot of parts for a lot of um, similar um, items. We don't necessarily do that. We have similar assemblies, right?
Hmm.
We have wall assemblies. We have similar ways we can clad a building, or roof a building, um, but we're constantly changing with our set of regulations, to try to figure out how we interpret a code, or a standard, or um, a, 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 a specific process, whether it's lead for sustainability, you know, how do we become more carbon neutral? Those are all things that we have to apply, not to a mass product. We have to apply it to this bespoke jewel that we're trying to create. So it's really, that's a uniqueness that I don't think a lot of, people outside of the people who do it know, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's really tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the remodeling industry, it's you you cannot control 100%. You just can't. There's just so many variables. So, if we can get to 80% known
Right,
and under control, and then we can manage the 20%, right? Is kind of the
right,
idea.
right.
If you
And think that
try,
the remodeling industry is even bigger,
yeah.
because you're going to uncover things that never even thought were there, or uncover things that help the project. You can uncover things that hinder the project. It's endless, right? When it
Oh,
comes to
yes.
that.
Turns out. Well, Brad, I know we're kind of over time right now
Oh, geez.
anyway, but I know we could just and there's like so many more. We'll have to do it again. I want to talk about some more stuff too. But just
Absolutely.
kind of my last question, because you were at Arc Ideas, which is 20 to 40 people, and then you were at Getch Partners for 15 years, 12 years, something like that.
Getch Partners 16,
16
basically.
years at Getch, and Getch was in multiple offices, 2 or 3 offices, right?
Hmm.
100 people,
Yeah.
somewhere around in there, and now
Yeah.
HOK 1,700. What are kind of some 1,700 people, 1,900 people? What are kind of the similarities in just seeing those different ranges of small, medium, large businesses in kind of the world of design and what you do?
As a recovering architect, I can say this: we're all the same.
And that's a good thing, right?
Yes. To be honest, yes. Even though we go, oh, I got to go on a Pollard project. He's got such, but we really, um, we're super collaborative. Um, we're we the idea that because we have this uniqueness of a product, a lot of times that uniqueness tends to trickle into, well, our standards need to be unique, right? Because they're so custom to just every project is so unique, then why do we even need standards?
Hmm.
We that's going to restrict us, and that's not even close to the case, right? The standards need to be that, like I said, that pencil that you just pick up and use without thinking about it, and that I think is um, the underlying goal for any kind of efficiency, right? I always say I want the architects to be architects. I don't want them to be CAD jockeys back in the day when CAD jockey was a term. I don't
Hmm.
want them to be, ultra, sophisticated, custom programmers for BIM, unless that's your desire and that's what the goals of your career. But in terms of architects, most of the people in the office want to do really good design, and you don't
Hmm.
want to be in the way of that. You want to be, someone that can in the background for the most part, help that process out, and for efficiency's sake and for um, uh, deliverable sake, right?
Awesome. Yeah. I
We're all
love
the
it,
same.
man.
We're all the
We're all
same.
the same. We're all just
All the
trying
same.
to we're all just trying to make cool shit, man.
Cool shit. Yep.
It's hard, but
That's
that's
it.
all we want to do, right?
That's it. Yep.
Any fun old stories you want to share from back in the day? There it is.
Oh,
Still have it.
um, I I intentionally tortured you. I there was Dave. Dave was I needed to kind of ground him because he was so smart, and
He
I
just
saw
thought
that
he
from
was
the,
so smart.
no. Now I'm going to give you a little props. I We didn't have work at Arc Ideas when you were when you came in the summer. We didn't have a lot of work. It was a little downtime, and I went up to Scott and the guys and I said, we need to hire this kid. I said, we can't let him go. And they
Oh.
said, we know. And so we hired, we got you hired still. And I every suggestion the wide-eyed Dave gave me, I criticized, and I did it tongue in cheek, and you knew it, and you were mad at me all, Brad, it was great. Well, young Dave did one time uh, really want a panini maker. He wanted the office to have a panini maker. I have no idea why, but I can't remember that far back. But he was
Because I
adamant,
was making
and
like
and
$7 an hour
and he
and
and
couldn't
he
afford lunch.
and he couldn't have. We as an office, we're like, okay, well, make a collection, and you'll get a panini maker. So he gets this little jar. Young Dave, enthusiastic Dave, he gets this little jar, and he starts he's got a little thermometer scale, on the wall, and just about ready to get I don't know what it was, $25 or whatever it was to get the panini maker. And I took all the money out of the jar,
So
and you were
upset.
furious that someone stole the money. And you came to me, and I denied. And Scott, the
I
head of
went
the
to the
office at the time,
partners.
you went to the partners and you demanded, reparations and all this. I want, this has got to stop. And they sent out an email, please return the money, and I let it sit a couple days, and then um, I snuck the money back in the jar, and but it was hilarious. And that tradition continued because when young Dave decided to start live companies, um, there was a delivery that came
Hmm.
to his office, and I don't know if you probably don't have it anymore. It's been
Oh, it's
years.
there. We've even had Panini Day. Yeah, I
So I,
refuse
I
to
deliver. I
participate.
sent a panini maker to
Yeah.
Dave's new office
Oh,
as
it's
an
totally
office
there.
warming gift.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Much.
that's
It was kind of, for any Goodfellas fans out there, it's kind of like go get your shine box. Don't forget where you came from, you piece
yeah,
of
yeah,
crap.
yeah. So
And
he got a panini maker. So
but
that's.
but this really meant a lot because this was from my internship, and so the
Go ahead. You
office,
tell that story. Go ahead and
yeah,
tell that story.
the office was under construction. They were expanding, and so I kept getting moved into a smaller and smaller desk area because I was an intern, and I was building like the model of the. I did a lot of model building. It was the model of the giant mega church. It was huge, and so it just kept moving me. So I'm like in the back of the materials library in this tiny. So it was kind of like Milton in Office Space, where the running joke was like, "Yeah, Dave, we're gonna need you down in the storage locker. We'll move you down there pretty soon." So then, on my going away party for my internship, I was gifted the Milton red swing line, but this was a time when uh, you couldn't just buy a red swingline stapler. Brad had to tape it and paint it. It's beautiful. It's perfect. Like it wasn't an easy thing to make this the official red swingline. And of all my staplers, it works the best. So
And
just
the red swing lines that they sell now aren't that red swing line.
no,
No.
that's the real legit one. It's got
Right.
the
Right.
weight to it. It always
Yeah.
works. So
Yeah.
that really meant a lot. And so much from a thoughtfulness, a process thinking, a culture. Um, uh, I It's just a reminder of how much more you know work I need to give towards my team in terms of mentorship, onboarding, and all these things. Because definitely learn so much from you, and hopefully can help it carry on through generations. I know everyone. Arc Ideas, you're kind of a legend. Gatch, a legend, and hopefully you're a legend for the right ways at HOK as well. I'm sure you will be.
Well, it's the sweetest thing, and the feeling is completely mutual. I can't thank you enough for naming your daughter after my wife. And uh, he still tells us that it's on accident, but I won't believe him.
No, it
Uh,
is. Well,
yeah.
she's
So
an incredible chef.
yeah.
We'll have to come
Oh
see
yeah.
y'all in Atlanta.
Yeah. Those are whole other discussions that we can have.
Oh, yeah, we got it. We'll do a Joe Rogan. We'll do like an 8 hour where we'll just talk old stories. We got to talk bowling.
Bowling.
How are you doing these days?
Doing good.
Any
Doing good.
tournaments?
Yeah, this weekend.
Yeah,
This weekend coming up. Yeah, first one here in Atlanta. So yeah,
you gonna win it?
I hope so, but that's why you go. But you know,
Just to give Brad a little bit of crap. He's an incredible bowler, and I always joke that he's one of those people like my brother who's so good at every sport that doesn't have defense.
that's so good.
Let me
That's
smack
so
that
good.
bowling ball out of the way and let's see how good you are.
Yeah, yeah. Let me get in front of that bowling ball while you throw it. Yeah,
All right, we'll leave it at that. But good luck this
awesome.
weekend, Brad. Always
Thank you,
great to
sir.
catch up with you, and we'll
It
talk
was a
soon.
pleasure. This is fantastic, and I know we'll be talking soon.
Yep. Thanks, man.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.